Tigers, Rebels. It's a Locked On crossover with Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It's a Locked On crossover. He is Steven Willis, Locked On Rebels. I'm Matt Moscona from Locked On LSU. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. What up, dude? Are y'all fired up in Oxford that we get this game annually?
Oh, yeah, yes. That was a non-negotiable. I didn't even think it was an option that Ole Miss wouldn't get LSU annually. I'm pretty fired up about that. What I'm really fired up about is that Ole Miss and LSU could end up back on Halloween. I am really fired up about that. That is something that needs to happen. Now that the Alabama game is not an annual opponent for LSU, that bye week before on Halloween weekend, kind of the need for that goes away. And if the SEC is doing what they're supposed to do, that game's going to end up back on Halloween weekend.
It's interesting, man. I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole, but it's interesting that was a non-negotiable. I don't know that was the feeling here, which is so weird for LSU, Steven, because like you all have Mississippi State, right? Like you've got your in-state, the game that of course, like that was a non-negotiable. Egg Bowl is going to be played. LSU just doesn't have those. You know what I mean? Like it's Ole Miss, it's Florida, it's Alabama, now it's Texas A&M as well. It's Arkansas for the stupid boot. We're a weird collective here because we lack even Georgia, which doesn't have their conference in-state opponent, has their thing with Auburn. I don't know, man. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing the Halloween thing come back. I guess I just hadn't even thought of that yet, that it could play out that way.
Yeah, something like the last three times in the last 10 years when they've beaten Ole Miss in Tiger Stadium, LSU fans have stormed the field. I mean,
so I have a feeling on that altogether. Like, stop storming the field, period.
Yeah.
I don't care who it's against. Like, stop doing it. Like, they storm the field against everybody now for big. It's like, stop. Children, stop doing this. Stop running on. Like, you've won 3 national titles since 2003. Stop running onto the field. Like, it's just not worth doing. But I don't know. Who might it be a killjoy?
But part of the reason that LSU doesn't have a rival is because from the 70s and 80s and the early 90s, Ole Miss wasn't good. I mean, not consistently. And the rivalry that was built up with Johnny Vaught way back in the 50s and 60s and all of that kind of just went away in the mind of the LSU fans, but that never went away in the minds of the Ole Miss fans.
That's a fascinating point, because I would say, I'm sorry to interrupt, but like if you ask my grandfather, like he would tell you Ole Miss, right? You're right, the Johnny Vaught, like that old 50s, 60s. My dad would probably tell you like Alabama from the 70s. For me, born in the 80s, growing up through the 90s, the LSU Auburn thing for me was awesome. My coworkers here at ESPN Radio in Baton Rouge, Jacob Hester, Matt Flynn, were part of some great games with LSU in Florida. So they've been moaning that LSU in Florida is not going to be played every year. It's kind of just like, I just think it's generational, but it would be great, man. I'll tell you, Lane's got this thing rolling in a way that I don't know when the last time Ole Miss has had this much sustained success. And I know this is a big one, obviously, if Ole Miss is going to continue toward a path in the playoff. And I know the giant news about Trinidad Chambliss. So, Steve, let's start there, man. Fill us in. I mean, that's obviously the biggest storyline in this game right now is who, and it's going to be Chambliss starting, but fill us in on all that there.
Trinidad Chambliss is going to get his third start in the LSU game, and that makes sense because last year, we'll talk about it, LSU's kryptonite on defense for Blake Baker was the running quarterback. I think Jalen Milroe is still running for touchdowns at this point. But Austin Simmons practiced fully on Tuesday for Ole Miss, and he is available even more so than he was. And to put that in perspective, the last 2 weeks, he was just in a boot watching practice. Okay. This time he was a full participant in practice. But Austin Simmons at 90%, you don't face this LSU defensive line with a quarterback at 90% on a bum ankle. You just don't do that. So you put in a mobile quarterback that you know that last year Blake Baker had trouble with Texas A&M, Alabama, and those games. And Trinidad Chambliss, he's just kind of the story of college football right now. He has a cool name. He's a really twitchy player. He makes all kinds of explosive plays. It's a fun matchup with the D2 guy, Trinidad, going up against that LSU defense that honestly, Matt, I'm going to be honest. When I watch LSU play, they look like Ole Miss in 2024. They do.
Yeah.
All over. Defense, everything. Struggling offensively, the inability to run the football. They are almost a carbon copy of that 2024 Ole Miss team. And the way you handle that LSU defense is probably the same way that they handled last year the Ole Miss defense. Score points, move the ball, get the explosives when they're available, and try to keep this a one-score game in the fourth quarter and let the pressure build on LSU. If they're going all in, they know they're going all in. Make them feel the pressure, especially on the road. And I think that might be the best shot for Ole Miss in this game.
Hey, does the offense change if it's Chambliss or Simmons?
It does. It actually does. It might look same, and there's a lot of the same concepts that are run whenever their passing plays are going about. But Ole Miss was in 13 personnel in the first quarter of last week's game. They don't do that with Austin Simmons. I mean, they had Luke Hall, Trace Bruckler, and all those things. They played 4 tight ends in the first quarter against Tulane. So there are going to be more quarterback design runs. They're going to try and use his strengths as a weapon, essentially, against this LSU defense. Obviously, Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss is going to try to take the aggressiveness and use that against the LSU defense. But it's going to be much more run heavy. You're going to see more exotic personnel groups, and they're going to, it's going to sound weird, but throw the ball down the field a little bit more.
I have a theory about Chambliss. This is not a hard and fast held belief. But I'm curious. I want to bounce it off you. I'm curious your thought. So he's obviously been very impressive. The 300 pass yards, 100 rush yards last week against Tulane. And I've had a chance to watch Ole Miss. I didn't watch the week 1, but I've watched the other 3 games. Just because of the time of day, it's worked out that I've been able to see him a good bit. Division II, Ferris State, you step up, and obviously a significant step up in level of competition. Coming against Arkansas, where no one really knows who you are, and Arkansas's defense is terrible. And then you play Tulane. And he's been impressive. I'm curious if this is just going to be a completely different animal for him with this LSU defense, that as impressive as Chambliss has been to this point, is this maybe this is a, I guess my theory would be, this is a step up that he's about to see something he hasn't seen yet, or anything close to it from Division II or Arkansas or Tulane, that this could overwhelm him a little bit with what he's about to see from Blake Baker.
Yeah, this is the best defense potentially that he is going to see all year. Now, the benefit of that is if Trinidad Chambliss does all right against LSU and Ole Miss wins the game, you feel pretty good about him going to Athens. You feel pretty good about him going to Norman if he's the guy. But the other thing is absolutely true, and that's probably why it's important that Austin Simmons is more ready than anybody even really expected, because of there is the chance that this is such a step up. This is a bridge too far for Trinidad Chambliss. And we'll see on Saturday night. It's going to be on Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss to put the kid in advantageous situations to where you're not dropping back to where, hey, it's 3rd and 11 and you're having to go against Harold Perkins coming off the edge. That's not what you want. You need to move the ball. You need to honestly play a little bit slow. I know tempo is their thing, but they have the athletes to play slow and just kind of methodically old school move the football. It doesn't matter if it's a low scoring game. If Ole Miss wins this game, they're likely a favorite to make the playoff this year. I
agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And if LSU wins this game, they're likely a favorite to make the playoff this year. This game is absolutely massive. And honestly, Matt, it's the game of the week this week in SEC play. I don't care. Don't tell me about Alabama and Georgia. Just because of the brands, they're going to Alabama and Georgia. This is the game that has a chance to be the game of the week.
All right, let's talk about some of the storylines beyond Ole Miss at quarterback, which, of course, is the storyline of this game. We'll do that as we continue. It is a Locked On crossover with Locked On LSU and Locked On Ole Miss. Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back, crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most, so let's break it down. For the Rebs, has to be Trinidad Chambliss. 300 passing yards, 100 rush yards. I don't think that's been done in like 50 years in that program. It's an incredible day that he had. For LSU, well, they beat up on an FCS school, but still a massive day for Garrett Nussmeier when they needed it the most. So just like Chambliss and Nussmeier delivered for the Rebels and the Tigers, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday that you order. So stack it up all season. You could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. And we're also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, so it is time to make sure that you're ready for kickoff with FanDuel's can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel. It fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, jumping in live as the action unfolds. Already seen a good bit of movement with the Tigers and the Rebels. Started with LSU as a slight favorite. Ole Miss went up to 2.5, now about 1.5. So which side do you fall on? Are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, biggest storylines for this game after what's going to happen at quarterback. We know Chambliss will start for Ole Miss and who both plays. From the Ole Miss perspective, what do you think is the biggest storyline in this game?
This is going to sound weird and counterintuitive, but it's Ole Miss stopping the run and making Garrett Nussmeier having to beat them as a one-dimensional quarterback. That's going to be the most important piece of this game. If LSU gets their running game going, that offense can get dang near unstoppable. We have seen LSU have success against Pete Golding when that running game gets going. So it's going to be imperative on Ole Miss, and they're 16th in the SEC right now in rush defense, going against a bad rushing offense for LSU. It's going to be the movable object versus the resistible force offensively, but whoever wins that is likely going to win the game.
I tend to agree. I think it's really just LSU's offensive line. You said it at the beginning, and you're right. The LSU is following the same path Ole Miss did a year ago. They had the veteran quarterback. They went ham in the transfer portal. Brian Kelly said it. They spent $18 million. They went and got better at every level of the defense. They've got stars all over on the offensive side of the ball. Like it's what $18 million should look like. Mm-hmm. The biggest problem they have at LSU is the offensive line. And it's interesting. So you had 4 guys drafted, right? Will Campbell and Emory Jones. Most people know those guys, but Dellinger and Frazier were the guards. A lot of people may not be as familiar with. But you had 4 of your 5 starters drafted. The other guy is DJ Chester, who played center. And he's not your center anymore. You went into the portal and you got they got Braylon Moore from Virginia Tech, who was a multi-year starter, who is by far their best offensive lineman right now. But the real issue, Steven, is like they got talent and they got experience. What they don't have are 5 guys that have played together. And so a lot of the issues they've had running the football early, I don't think it's a lack of ability from backs or offensive linemen. I've watched enough film breakdowns of people who are way smarter than me, and they'll look at blocking schemes, and you'll see, man, it's guys that are trying to combo block, and one guy thinks he's passing a defensive lineman off to a guy next to him, and it just whiffs. So that's the kind of thing where I think this LSU offensive line in November is dramatically better with experience than they are in September. So how much of a hopefully exponential growth curve can they have week to week this year? And going on the road, obviously, and what'll be a tough environment will be interesting. But I'm curious, and I hope you can answer this. Like, you're right, it's bad on bad. But why is Ole Miss's rush defense been like? Why are they dead last in the league right now in rush defense?
Well, I think that's a nuanced question, honestly. First of all, it's young guys. It's young guys everywhere. And it's kind of the same thing that happened with LSU on the offensive line. They gave up explosive runs against Georgia State and against Kentucky. That's got the numbers a little bit out of whack. They didn't give up touchdowns, but they gave up 30 and 40-yard chunk runs. And that counts in these statistics. Against Tulane on Saturday, when Ole Miss knew that Tulane was going to try and run the ball and Tulane needed to get a yard, Tulane couldn't get a yard. So they can do what they need to do. And they got better because they weren't doing that against Georgia State, if that is ridiculous. So the young guys are getting better as the course of the year goes on, but they're still not quite there. LSU's run game, it's going to be interesting because everybody should know Logan Diggs is in the backfield and understands that offense pretty considerably. So especially the run game. So the keys in the run game, Ole Miss should be pretty well adept of that, but they can't give up explosive plays, because when you give up explosive plays, then the tight end becomes a weapon. And when the tight end becomes a weapon shortly after that, it's going to be Barry and Brown and those guys on the outside. And next thing you know, you have the same game that we saw in 2023 to where nobody can stop anybody. And it's just an abomination for defensive coaching. But that's the key. LSU's offense, if you can't stop the run, it's going to be a long day for you. And this year shows that, honestly. Florida's not very good. The fact that LSU only scored one offensive touchdown after getting 5 interceptions, that's a little bit concerning. Clemson, not very good. We thought they were very good. That was a very big win at the beginning of the year and something that LSU has not had over the last 5 years. But it's coming into this game last year when Ole Miss took on Kentucky. I think this weekend, if we're going to be honest, is when Ole Miss played Kentucky.
Right.
We were all saying, well, Ole Miss hasn't played anybody. We don't know what to expect from this Ole Miss team. We don't know how good they really are. And then they went in there and Kentucky brought the fight to us and took Ole Miss down. And LSU, what do we really know about LSU right now? Because Clemson right now does not look very good. Florida is just an absolute dumpster fire. I think LSU might have broke DJ Lagway, if we're going to be real about it. But what do we know? We know that they can take care of Sela. We understand that. But what do we know in this game? This is going to be the biggest atmosphere that group of $18 million transfers have come into. Clemson was big, but obviously we just talked about that.
With respect, Clemson was a madhouse, bro. Bigger stadium, they were bonkers. Don't diminish that. They went on the road in a big spot, and I understand every bit of skepticism about the Clemson and Florida wins as the sample size grow. What I'll say about both those teams, especially on their defensive front, are really talented.
Yeah, they have dudes. They really have dudes.
And I think what you saw offensively, it's interesting because I waffle a little bit here on if Brian Kelly's being truthful or if there's something more at work. And he's usually been pretty candid with us. But you referenced 2023, which was an abomination. Literally the worst defense statistically LSU's ever fielded. You all saw the worst of the worst in that game in Oxford. And I think Brian Kelly knew going into those games, maybe Nussmeier, the torso thing, whatever he was talking about. I think he knew he has a loaded gun on defense. They're really good on special teams as well. I think he knew he could go in there, and the only way that they were going to lose those games is if they made plays to get themselves beat. So I think they intentionally played a defensive game where they did play defense, field position, and they just didn't even attempt to stretch the field. Mm-hmm. Now, you're not going to be able to do that every week. I don't think they're going to be able to do that this week. I think they're going to have to go score points. But I think you're right in saying, like, this is the game where we will learn, right? Okay, so were you playing defensive games just because you're bringing along a young offensive line, or do you have real issues offensively? You're like, no one should take anything out of scoring 56 on an FCS opponent. But this is the one where you'll learn. But I wouldn't diminish that environment, man. Like,
no, it's not the environment,
bunch
not
of
the
new
atmosphere.
dudes to go to that. That was an impressive Look, let's be honest. Part of the reason also why those two teams are where they are is because LSU beat them.
Yeah. And also, let's be real about this. If LSU is the mirror of the 2024 Ole Miss team, they're going to get a conference opponent and put 70 points on the board. They are going to play up against somebody that you're not sure if they're going to be able to beat. The question is, and the thought is, you don't want it to be you. You don't want it to coalesce. It's going to happen this year. It might be Arkansas again. It might be somebody, but it's going to happen, and you just don't want it to be you, because once they get going, they have the dudes to make you hurt because they paid the money to make you hurt.
Yeah. All right, let's do this. Final thought and score predictions. We'll do that when we come back to wrap up here. It's a crossover with Locked On Ole Miss and Locked On LSU. Stay there. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda, moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward for the Tigers, how about Garrett Nussmeier, touchdown pass to Berrien Brown, his first as an LSU Tiger, was so explosive during fall camp. That's one play that moved the game forward. And when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. And we're brought to you by our friends at Our Lady of the Lake, championship health partner of LSU Athletics, part of the Franciscan Missionaries of Our Lady Health System. Our Lady of the Lake is committed to building the Baton Rouge community. Just this year, the health system has approved more than $250 million in capital expenditures. They're investing in the future of our region's healthcare with projects including a major ER renovation at the Regional Medical Center, new observation beds at the Livingston campus, a medical office building at the St. Elizabeth campus, a significant rejuvenation of the adult and adolescent mental health facilities, and so much more. It's the same expert care trusted by LSU that's ready when and where you need it. You can trust Our Lady of the Lake just like I do and my family does. OLOLRMC.com/LSU. OLOLRMC.com/LSU. Our Lady of the Lake and LSU. Together, we roar. All right, Steven, Tigers, Rebels. Give me a sense of how you think this one plays out Saturday. Storylines, pick if you want to do it, all that stuff.
I think that Ole Miss, they're going to this game fairly confident right now because, heck, you want to take LSU to Trinidad, that type of deal. So we're pretty excited about what the program looks like. I want to see the game that's in my head a year ago, and Brian Kelly is the one that brought this to my attention of all people. He mentioned that preparing for two quarterbacks is not a big deal. They did the same thing a year ago against Texas A&M. And then you looked at the box score of that game, and it was explosive runs and not handling a running quarterback. And in the second half, they absolutely
just to clarify, the point he made, and that was this Monday at his press conference, was that this was different than that one because those quarterbacks were different. Because it was a Connor Wegman who was pro style, and LSU was handling Wegman. They went to Marcel Reed, and they did not have a plan for Marcel Reed. The point he was making was with Simmons and Chambliss, you're talking about two guys that stylistically can do some of the same things. So it's not like you'd have a complete 180 switch.
Okay. Well, that put that game in my head. So they're running quarterback. At that point, I thought that Trinidad Chambliss should be the starting quarterback for this game, especially after what Jalen Milroe did a year ago, the kryptonite that we talked about a running quarterback. I think the path to victory is Ole Miss needs to play clean. They cannot give short fields to LSU under any circumstances. Going for it the whole 9 yards. Do not give LSU a short field. And if you're able to put that together and handle that, I think you win the game like 24-17. I think that's where I'm living. Ole Miss 24, LSU 17.
Yeah, I know this is probably going to surprise your audience, but a year ago I picked Ole Miss to win the game in Baton Rouge, and I've had a really good sense. I pissed off a lot of Ole Miss fans in 22 when I on Monday told you that LSU was going to beat Ole Miss. That was when Ole Miss was undefeated. I've had a good finger on the pulse of this game. You keep bringing up the running quarterback, and I understand it. What you're neglecting to acknowledge or maybe college football hasn't seen yet, this LSU defense might be the best defense in the country. In the same way that Ole Miss last year with Walter Nolan and Princely Monmiela and Chris Paul and Trey Amos and all those dudes, this is not last year. This is nothing resembling that. They have dudes at every level. You got Harold Perkins back healthy. Whit Weeks is an All-American. You've got a rotation at defensive end of studs that put pressure on the passer. You have an interior pass rush with Bernard Gooden. You're deep at tackle. They'll rotate 6 or 7 defensive tackles if they want to. Monsoor Delane is a lockdown corner. God bless. Y'all are playing Sage Ryan over there. Last year was the worst safety play I've ever seen in my life at LSU, and Sage Ryan was a part of it. They went and got an all-conference guy in AJ Halsey. This is going to be a game where LSU's defense controls it because it can. It's going to be like Big Brother putting his hand on little brother's head and just keeping you at arm distance as he starts to swipe and just never gets close enough to clip. I think it's a close game, but I would take that score and probably just invert it. I think it's probably like a 27-17, 24-17 LSU win Saturday in Oxford. But nobody's going to be surprised that you and I disagree on that.
Yeah.
We will give throughout the course of the remainder of this week as we get closer to LSU and Ole Miss. On Friday, or our final episode, do a full preview and full prediction final with after all the coaches meet with reporters on how this is all going to end up playing out with LSU and Ole Miss as we lead into game day. And then, of course, as soon as the game goes final, I'll be on Locked On LSU, giving you post-game comments and thoughts. Steven, I'm sure you'll be doing the same for Locked On Ole Miss as well.
Yes, we will absolutely be talking about it.
Yeah, so as soon as the game ends, make sure you catch that post-game commentary as well with the Tigers and the Rebels. And this is a game, as we mentioned, that is going to be played now in perpetuity, not going away. One of the protected annual rivalry games by the Southeastern Conference. And the Tigers will actually be in Oxford 2 consecutive years. So LSU will make this trip in back-to-back seasons for LSU and Ole Miss. But, of course, Saturday is a big one with giant playoff implications. Hey, it's another big moment on Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. All right, we're going to wrap up this episode here, this crossover episode of Locked On LSU and Locked On Ole Miss. Hey, do us a favor. If you're listening on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And please be sure to let a friend know that if they love the Tigers or the Rebels, subscribe and that we're here every single day for Locked On LSU and Locked On Ole Miss.